All right. Well, welcome everyone to our first Insights event where we're going to talk about the different keys to greatness from the book A Warrior's Mindset, the 6 keys to greatness. Um, Hopefully, most of you have purchased the book or started the book. Maybe you've got through this chapter, maybe you haven't. That's fine. Or maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about and you just saw this post and it sounded interesting. That's fine too. Okay. But that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to do 6 of these in a row. So the next 6 weeks. Okay. Each one is going to be focused on a different key in the book. And I want to kind of explain the general structure of these events. So first, we're gonna every time because we might have people who have missed previous ones. I'll quickly give an overview of the structure of the book. We'll talk about where today we'll talk about where the idea came from, sort of the evolution of it, the background, right? A little like sort of enhancement and peel back the curtain behind the book itself, and we'll talk about why I wrote the book, why it's different than other self-help concepts, and sort of my personal take on that. And then once we do that, we'll get into the actual insights. So when we get into the insights of the actual key, we're going to talk about an overview and background, kind of what we're doing now. Then we'll cover the key, the specific key to greatness. We'll answer questions as we go, right in the chat box. I'll answer as many as I can. And then at the end of it, we'll do a free Q&A again about anything you want. A book, a specific key, implementation steps, other projects, programs, whatever, thoughts about the world. I'm here for it. And then, of course, we'll talk about at the end, if you want more information about working with me in different capacities, I'll kind of explain how that works. So I think that, first here, let's talk about the structure of the book and where it came about. So the book itself, right, is a warrior's mindset. And I got some questions about where this warrior's mind, why a warrior's mindset, why that branding. And I even got some pushback from some people, some negative feedback from a marketing perspective, saying that I don't know if you should call it that. But for me, the warrior's mindset is something just undeniable, right? I don't see being a warrior or that concept as having any negative connotation. I believe that warrior mentality means that you have beliefs that you believe in strongly. You are committed and willing to take action to make the world a better place, and that you have certain principles and values. But it also means that you're open to constant improvement. And at the very end of the book, when you get there, you'll find a letter that was written from the widow of a former teammate of mine on my special forces team that really has impacted me in a lot of ways. And I don't want to spoil that. We'll get to that in the last chat, the very end. But basically the message was never stop fighting for what you believe in. And to me, a warrior's mindset is commitment to making the most of your life, like making your life count for something. And to me, that's a difference between thriving and surviving. And I think it's just a critical, and I was really inspired by her words. And so that's why it's called a warrior's mindset. The other question I get on sort of a branding perspective, right, is what do you mean greatness, right? Before, I think I do a pretty good job of the book kind of explaining that. But what do you, see, David says, hey, other than me writing it, the name got to him. So great, it's hitting the right people. So the next question I got was like, well, what is greatness? Like, how are you defining that, right? It's kind of a broad term, right? And to me, greatness is achieving a state of living where every moment is filled with fulfillment and purpose, and ultimately achieving transcendence, right? Which is sort of a very heady concept, but it really is the pinnacle that's identified in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And that's posted in the book as well. And it is the highest state of being. And what does transcendence mean, right? Transcendence means that you feel an almost inner enlightenment or a constant sense of connection with the world around you. Some people would even call this like ego death, right? And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do, but I believe it is almost the sort of the end of suffering, right? And that is the big task that a warrior's mindset sets out to do, right? So it sort of brings us full circle to why write the book, where did it come from? And I know this is a bold claim, and maybe it's a turnoff for some people, I don't know, right? But I set out, and I believe 100% in this framework, that a warrior's mindset and the 6 keys to greatness provides a solution that solves human discontent. And I know that's a big claim, but I believe it fully. And here's the difference between this and some other sort of like maybe like self-help or self-improvement books, stuff like that, right? Is that almost every other self-improvement, self-help book where they have great strategies and there's important content there for everyone, especially if you've had stuff that, it's important to always be improving, but they're always treating symptoms, right? It's like, well, I have anxiety. How do I deal with that? Well, here's some stuff to deal with anxiety. I'm depressed. Okay, well, here's some things to do for that. I don't know what to do with my life. Okay, I don't know that. I have trouble with my relationships. Okay, here's some things. I don't know how to deal with this trauma I had. Oh, here's a strategy for that, right? And so it's like, but to me, it's all universal, right? I think that all comes back from a very similar place. And I think that you can create a structure, an algorithm, a process, a framework that doesn't just address a symptom of the discontentment with the human condition, but a solution to the underlying problem, right? All those other self-help books that I just mentioned, all these other things that are symptoms, it's like, okay, you keep getting a headache and they give you a solution to stop the symptom of the headache. But at some point you have to be like, why the hell do I keep getting headaches? Why do I have a problem getting motivated? Why can't I find this purpose? Why do my relationships fail? Why do I feel bad about myself? It's just all these other things. And then we treat them like they're all these, like it's all some unique thing, right? But there's 300 million people on earth and we are like 99% out, basically 100% genetically the same. And things may manifest themselves differently for different people. But I think there's a oneness to that. And so that's what this book does. It gives you a framework to become the greatest version of yourself in your experience of life. So, to dive into the first key here, like what does that mean for perspective and gratitude? The first key, and why is it the first key, right? Your worldview or your perspective is a culmination of your experiences, right? It is a product of everything you've thought, experienced. You're synthesizing that information, and then you're generating an idea of what that means for the world. And the thing that people don't want to admit, but is 100% true, is that you're 100% in control of it. Right? Like how you think about things is 100% within your control. How you think about the world, your values, how you conduct yourself, your actions, your inactions, all those things, it's not going to happen. It's not a switch you can flip on, but through work and effort, we can create a positive worldview and a positive perspective. But you have to be willing to change. The first perspective that's fundamental to, I think, us humans is our perspective of self, our self-awareness, who we think we are in the larger picture and what we're good at, what we're not, who we're supposed to be. And in the book, as you've read through, you've probably seen the 2 bios exercise. And that's one I use with my clients as well, that as we work through mindset. And this is a takeaway you can do for yourself. I encourage you to, right? Which is, I want you to make a bio that is about, think about all the challenges. Think about all the mistakes. Think about all your failures. And write down a whole biographical representation of what all that was, right? What that looked like. What that looks like. And then make another one that is all your accomplishments, all the things you've overcome, everything you've contributed to the world, all your accomplishments. And the reality is that there's people on earth that can only see themselves through the first bio. They think that they are the person who made that mistake. But that's not true. They are the person who had a failed marriage. They are the person who treated that person wrong. They are the person who made that mistake. They are the person who was on their phone while they were driving and hit somebody. And maybe you are that person still today, but only if you didn't learn from those mistakes. But if you look at the positive side, you'll see that you've overcome and changed so much. And that's growth. That shows you that you are not the person from 5 years ago. You're not the person of yesterday. You're the person here today who has gone through that. And now that is 100% in your control to learn and grow from that. And we have to commit. It sets you up to have a constant perspective of self-improvement. And our goal through our proper perspective and through the 7 fuel sources of gratitude is eventually to do exercises and training and reading and work to bring this perspective and bring gratitude to the top of our mind, to put a gratitude lens filter on the world before it gets to us. So everything we see, we show gratitude for. That's the goal. That's not where most of us are at now. But you can get there, but with work. And then a lot of these training and work, just like everything else, once you get to that sort of state, right? You plateau, the work gets easier. Right? If you go to work out, the first time you go to bench 200 pounds, it's impossible. But doesn't mean it's always impossible. Right? And gratitude and mindset are no different. You keep working and building, and eventually that gratitude mindset is that 200-pound bench, and you can do it. You get you get your big muscles on, and you can do it forever, right? It becomes easy. And it opens you up to a new world that you didn't even think was possible before that. So we want to create a state of being a perspective and gratitude where gratitude is automatic in everything we see and do. So I believe that this is the true fuel source, and this is why it's chapter 1, the first key, right? These keys to greatness are in order. It's a framework. You can't jump around. We have to start with perspective and gratitude because motivation wanes. Sometimes we're happy. Sometimes we're sad. Bad things happen. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we're sick. Sometimes things don't go our way. And if you rely on, well, today I'll wake up and I'll see how I feel and then I'll decide what to do, you're never going to achieve greatness. You have to have an internal energy source that is infinite, that you wake up every single day that you can dip into, especially when you don't feel like it. When you are driven by motivation, your outcomes will vary. When you're driven by gratitude, your outcomes are steady. So let's talk about the first key, a warrior's descendants. The reality is we're all descendants of warriors. That's why when people kind of get upset about the whole warrior thing, I'm like, I'll tell you what, the beta people who stayed in, our possible descendants, people who came before us who were too scared to leave the cave, were too scared to interact with other people, too scared to make mistakes and have hard conversations, to have meaningful relationships, were too scared to go out and hunt and kill with their bare hands and bring things in or work to defend the tribe, they got kicked out. We're not made of those people's things. Their genetics didn't procreate. Every one of us alive today is the descendant of conquerors, of builders of great civilizations, of people who took care and mothered their young, who worked and built new structures, who hunted, who gathered, who made new materials, who drove innovation forward. Those are the people who procreated. That's who we come from. And we have gotten, if you get yourself too far from that mindset, you will always be lost, and you'll always be looking for an answer that's never coming because you're not being true to who you are. You're a warrior. And that doesn't mean that you get in fights down at the bar. That means you fight for what you believe in and you have self-discipline to a higher purpose than your own self-comfort. Because that's what really, for my time in the military, and those of you who have served before will know this, right? That's one of the big differences that I see the people who have served in the military and people who haven't. Is that people who serve in the military, especially those in combat arms and have seen combat or have trained hard, know that they have the ability to put the mission before their own comfort. There's a lot of people who have never put themselves in the position to decide that their comfort wasn't the most important thing. Their safety wasn't the most important thing. But we have to get out of that mindset. And we have to get in a warrior's mindset where we manage discomfort, but we're not living for the pure purpose of comfort, of being comfortable. That's a sad state of affairs where you get to a point where your whole purpose in life is to be comfortable. You will never achieve greatness. You will never feel fulfilled because it's not what you're designed. It's not how you're designed. You're designed to be a warrior and strive for something bigger than yourself. Number 2, self-awareness and epistemic humility. I'm going to spend a little time on this one because it's kind of complex, but I think it's absolutely critical to understand. Okay. Some of the other ones I'm going to go faster on because they're kind of covered in other areas or they're more self-explanatory. Okay. So we are talking about self-awareness a bit and the importance of that. Let's talk about epistemic humility. Epistemic humility is first of all, it's absolutely true, whether you believe it or not. Okay. Because what it says is that any concept, any skill, any understanding, any wisdom available, we can get more sure of over time and better at with effort and energy. But it also states that we have to treat everything in life as statistics. And we have to use a confidence interval, right? A Bayesian probability. So I know that's kind of like a heady thing, but let's talk about what I mean by that is. It means, think about a scientific experiment, right? You find someone who's a physicist who's studied physics their entire life, right? Or biology or chemistry, whatever. And they've spent thousands of hours in their whole being to do this thing. They know more about physics than you and I do. They understand it at a different level, right? And you can do this with anything, right? The fact is, like, I'm not a parent. So I have some intellectual opinions about the best way to raise a child and what that means, but I don't experientially know what that means. Right? And those of your parents do. And the more time and energy you put into something, the better you can get at it. But even these scientists who spend all their time learning about this specific set will do an experiment, but the only way you can prove something true is if you control for one variable at a time. That's the only way to do it. You have to be able to control every other variable in that equation or that situation to prove yes or no on a variable. So even though scientists will create a theory that says, well, we can do this in the lab, and so we think that means this in the real world, and then they'll assign a probability to it. We're 70% sure. We're 80% sure. But there are way too many variables involved. Anytime you leave that lab, and mathematically, as soon as you have 2 variables, and there's a lot more variables than 2 in the world, in reality, it's a confidence factor. You don't know anything. None of us do. With 100% certainty, we could be living in a simulation. Can you prove to me we're not? No, there's a chance, right? So every belief and opinion we have, you can get more sure of it with time and effort, but you have to also recognize that there's a possibility you're dealing with incomplete or flawed data. And this is so key because this is where it forces you to have an open mind and empathize with others. Because no matter how strong your conviction, you have to say, could be wrong, though. I 100%, I believe this, based on all the information in my life, based on my feelings, my spiritual experiences, the data in front of me. I believe this. Awesome. We can have a conversation. But as soon as you say, and I know that 100%. No, you don't. You don't know anything 100%. None of us do. So we have to open the opportunity for something else, for us to be wrong and someone else to be right, or a different reality, or a different thought, or a different concept to be better. And there's power in this because it forces us to always be looking and always be trying to get better. But as soon as you put a cap on it, you'd be like, nope, got it figured out. Done with that. Done with that idea. Growth is impossible. Progress is impossible. And the gratitude comes from the unknown. When people do that, they do it because they do it out of fear, right? The afterlife is a great example. The reality is, I don't care what religious or non-religious beliefs you have, you don't know, and neither do I. You have to admit that. You have to. And someone who doesn't is lying to themselves. They're lying to you. They can say, hey, I've seen all the data. I have all these experiences, and this is what I believe happens, and that's my faith. If you tell me that about anything you believe, I'll say, cool. And then we can have now we can have a debate. Well, I think this. Why do you think that? And then we get better because we're working together. But when I say, well, actually, what have you thought about that? Be like, nope. We can't progress. And not only that, you're choosing fear over potential enlightenment and progress. And you will never achieve greatness, and you'll never achieve fulfillment when you live in fear. That's epistemic humility, and it's critical. A global perspective. I don't think I used to use a bunch of different examples I used the different examples of the book, and when I presented on this, I would use different examples to demonstrate a global perspective of how lucky we are to be. I'm assuming most of you are in America, in this country, or in some sort of Western country with some basic human freedoms. But most people will never understand that. But we all got kicked in the face a couple months ago when Afghanistan fell for the Taliban for a lot of reasons. But I'm sure you probably saw in the news where parents were literally throwing their babies over razor wire to strangers. Can you imagine, especially those of your parents, can you imagine the condition that you're in? Your environment is in such a state that you believe 100% being that it is a better outcome for your child to be thrown over razor wire to a soldier of a foreign country than live with you where you live? Think about that mindset. Think about that reality. How awful that must be. And that's happening right now. So we don't have to talk about history or progress. We can talk about right now. And we could do this in most parts of the world. And I'm not saying that in the United States or any other westernized country that we are perfect and done. Far from it. Epistemic humility is actually the opposite, right? We need to constantly be progressing and getting better. And we have a ton of issues. But if you're on this call right now and you're on this Facebook Live right now, I'm guessing you have a roof over your head. I'm guessing you have a climate-controlled house. I'm guessing you have a car. I'm guessing you have access to more food than you can healthily consume. And you also have access to the internet, which means you have access to the knowledge, more knowledge you could ever consume in your whole lifetime, and the possibility to really learn and do anything you want in your life. And when you have real gratitude for that human condition, how do you wake up and feel sorry for yourself? How do you wake up and waste a single second? And hopefully you feel an obligation to those who don't have that right now to change the world, to be able to improve their lives. Globally, obviously also we have a lot of people living and horrible conditions in this country. But I'll tell you, it's nothing like these other countries. It's in some parts of the world where there is no chance of having free will. And so every day you should wake up thankful for where you live, but don't be that if you don't like it, get out people. That's not what America is based on. If that was it, we would have never changed. It should be, I believe in the principles of this country that you live in, to have respect basic human rights. And I'm going to work to make it even better because that's what the previous generation did for me, which brings us to historical foundation. In the past, people, whether they're soldiers, from the Revolutionary War, I'm going to use America as an example. Revolutionary War, Civil War, people that fought in world wars, but also the suffragettes, right? The civil rights protesters who said we're not all equal until we're all treated equally under the law. There's people who suffered and were tortured and died just to push the needle 1/2 of 1% forward for each one of us. And they sacrificed their time and energy and lives. It's also the people who stood up brand new ideas, the innovators, the people who got laughed off the stage and then kept going and then built great companies that have built the most powerful economy humankind has ever seen. In a very short time, in 10,000 years, we've gone from hunter and gatherers to being able to have this Facebook Live across the world right now. We've gone from not being able to stay in one place and chasing around food sources to you can be a millionaire with this one thing in your phone by the time you're 25. And so we have to, as the answer is here, right? We take too much for granted. Exactly. And we have to stop. And you have to stop. And we have to teach and we have to preach from the mountaintop gratitude. And if you look historically, my God, what a time to be alive. Not doesn't make everything better or perfect. That's not what I'm saying. But the potential you have to change your life, your condition, and make an impact on others has never been greater. Your known foundation. These are the people that are in your life, and we often don't think about them enough, that are in your life that have sacrificed for you, right? No one is self-made. Parents, clergymen, coaches, mentors, teachers, right? A great textbook has never made a great student. It's never changed a student's life, but a great teacher has. Right? A great income has never made a happy family unit, but a great parents do. It takes people and leadership and appreciation and gratitude to drive that forward. And there have been thousands of people in your lives, most of whom you've probably even forgotten about, that have sacrificed their most precious resource, time and energy, so that you would have the opportunity you have today. So that you have the life that you have today. So you have the knowledge that you have today. And so with all these foundations, especially when we talk about these specific people, when we talk about what is the fuel source for this, is that it's not about you. It's not just about you. For all of those times, those thousands of hours that other people sacrificed for you, you owe them. You owe them to be your best self. You owe them to make the world around you a better place, to live up to your true potential, to not get stuck in thinking, to not get stuck in your ways, but to always seek improvement and always seek to impact and spread and give that same sacrifice to others. The sixth fuel is your unknown foundation. It's the obligation of greatness to all those that you've never known that have sacrificed their own health, freedom, and lives toward the greater common good. Maybe that's historically, maybe that's right now. All the people you don't know that, I mean, if you just think about it, right, if it's anything we learned during this quarantine is that we are interconnected. You see it with supply chain now, right? You see it, I mean, we live in civilization because we all play a role, and people who sacrifice to make that happen. The law enforcement officers, the community activists, the people in policy, the people in business that stand up and come up with new ideas to make our lives better. I mean, one of my friends is a kindergarten teacher last year, trying to teach kindergartners on Zoom calls. Oh my God. Right? Like, thank God for people like that, right? She's also the same teacher that, despite the fact they weren't supposed to have contact, drove to her students and dropped little goodie bags for them and said and waved from the street to make their lives a little better. That's improving the life of that child. That's investing in other people. And we have so many people that we have never even heard of that have sacrificed so much for us. And so with those, before I get to the last key, those 6 keys, when you think like that all the time, when you have top of mind all the people you've known that have sacrificed for you, your immediate family, your coach, everyone, all the people you don't know right now, how lucky you are to be alive in 2021 versus 1721, right? I use the stat in the book. In 1800 in the United States, the child mortality rate, children under the age of 5, was like 47%. Can you imagine living in a world where not a rarity, not it might happen. On average, you have 4 kids, 2 die before the age of 5. And everyone's kids. And we're worried about social media likes and echo chambers and whatever else, right? I'm not here and I'm not saying that you have to feel good all the time and you can't be sad about these things and that we don't have struggle in our lives. But when you put it in perspective in all these ways, right? Maybe you overcome one of those. Maybe you're like, well, I didn't really get that known foundation thing. Everyone, my family was kind of jerks, whatever. Global, hey, you get what you deserve, whatever. But if you stack all those things up and you keep them at top of mind at always, and you realize that it's not about you, that you're a part of something bigger, and it's about that with the potential for greatness that you have because of others, you now have an inherent moral obligation to live up to your potential. Not for you, for them. Right? I recently, my mom's on this call, so it's really, and I'll try not to get emotional about this, but we recently had a cousin I was really close to. It was like a sister, die of cancer. How do we deal with loss like that? How do we deal with grief for someone so special? We use, what I look at is, she had so much potential to impact others positively that loss for humanity of that potential goodness, I have to do now. That's my responsibility. I have to be a better person. I have to impact more people because she would have and she doesn't get a chance to. And that's how I honor her memory. That's how I honor the memory of soldiers who didn't make it home. Is that when I start feeling sorry for myself or I feel weak or I don't feel like getting up and doing the extra 10% to be excellent, to make a difference, I could give up on myself in a heartbeat, but I'm not giving up on them. Ever. And this powerful fuel that when you bring it to top of mind, nothing stops you. Nothing short of death will stop me from achieving my potential for greatness. And some people tell me, oh, you work too hard. You probably like, I don't care. I take care of myself. I'm fine. I feel good about it. But I'm living for a lot of more people than just me. And I'm sure you are too. So let's keep that top of mind. The last thing, the last fuel for greatness here I want to talk about is the warrior's reality. And this is another one kind of like epistemic humility that is a little more complex and a little heady, but I'll break it down. So when you get into this from like a philosophical perspective, right, a life perspective of you and your view of the world and your role in it and driving to be great, you run into a fundamental argument of philosophy, which is free will versus determinism, right? Because let's take him to the extreme. If nothing is determined and everyone has equal free will, when that happens, you lose empathy for other people. Because you can start looking at people who maybe aren't as, they're struggling, the poor, the sick, people in other countries, whatever, that say, well, they just didn't try hard enough. Like the world is some equal meritocracy, which it's clearly and mathematically not, right? So then you have the flip side of that, which is determinism, right? Where determinism says, if you're a hard determinist, as they call it, right, or a causal determinist, it means that because every cause or every effect has a cause, then theoretically, if we had a supercomputer or a brain strong enough to input all of the variables ever, all of history, all of science, all of everything that's happening in real time, that it could, then everything is caused by other things, that it could predict the future the same way it predicts the past. And if that's the case, then everything's already predetermined. And how do you stay motivated to keep going if you're like, well, what's the point anyway? I'm going to make decisions I make. I'm going to do what I do. And the world's just going to happen. It's not in my hands. Right? That's no way to live either. And that's not true. And so as I struggled with this, and maybe someone out there will tell me that I've stolen this some concept, but I did research. I didn't find it. Okay. So what I came up with was how I rectify these two concepts to create the warrior's mindset, which is I came up with a new term called statistical determinism. So I use physics to prove my point. So let me get to physics real quick. For a long time, right, in quantum mechanics, right, conventional physics, we found that if we found the right equation and the right variables, we could predict the future, right? Scientists can tell you that, the exact position of the moon 11 years, 4 days, and 3 hours from now. Because everything works together, right? We all know that force equals mass times acceleration, right? So as long as we know the mass and acceleration, we can tell you exactly what the force is. And we can predict those things, okay? But in the last 20 years or so, quantum mechanics came into play. And what we found is when we get down to a macro level, we get down to an electron level, we see randomness. No cause and effect, no predictability. As soon as you look at an electron, it moves. And we can't explain it. It's some sort of natural law that we don't understand. And we're trying to explain it now. And so my argument is that this applies to human beings as well. That at a macro level, it is deterministic, right? But statistical determinism, back to the Bayesian probability, because it is absolutely true that we can predict relatively the future, right? We can say if you're born a black man in the United States, you are 5 times more likely to go to prison than a white person. There's no argument with that. It's just factual, right? But you can't look at an individual, a baby doesn't come out of the womb and you're like, that's going to be a convict and be 100% accurate. No, it doesn't work like that, right? Because we have free will at an individual level. And I believe that there is a natural, whether you want to call it a natural law, whether you want to call it a spirit or a soul, whatever you want to call it, there's something at the individual level that this idea of consciousness gives us, where we at an individual have free will. And yes, we all have that, but statistical determinism does impact us. So what this allows us to do is live in a world that's optimized for greatness. It's optimized because at our level, at a micro level, an individual level, we know that we have free will and we control our outcomes and we're responsible for our outcomes. But when we're dealing with other people, especially groups of people, we have to understand that statistical determinism impacts them and their reality is different than ours. And so when we make policy, when we make decisions how we treat groups, when we put businesses together, we have to take in consideration that the world is not the same for everyone. And it allows us to lead our lives with empathy for others to improve the environment that impacts their reality while taking ownership of our own reality to improve our lives. And that's the Warrior's reality. So those are the 7 fuels of gratitude that create infinite energy for your life. And when you have those in your toolkit and they're at the top of mind at all times, you're unstoppable. All you're doing is rest, recover, back at it. Rest, recover, get back at it. And you're able to live with purpose and chase your North Star, which was the third key to greatness. I'm living proof, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not lying to you. Yes, I told you I'm sad sometimes. Yes, I feel sorry for myself. I struggle with imposter syndrome. I struggle with a lot of things. I tackle these existential questions, and I struggle sometimes with anxiety, depression like everybody else. But I will tell you that every day is awesome. Even if I'm sad, I'm motivated. Every time that I get this, I think, especially from my time in the military, right? Every time I get home and I walk into my house, climate controlled, with a wife and kid and dogs I love, and I sit down, I watch Netflix, and I get food I want, and I snuggle up my comfy blanket. Every single one of those times, I just think back to laying in the mud. Every time I go inside, I'm like, sleeping inside is so much better than sleeping outside. Right? But we don't think about it like that. Every time, so people ask me, well, do you do a lot of gratitude exercises? I don't do a lot of gratitude exercises because I just did one a second ago. I live in a constant state of gratitude exercise. And so you can too, but you just have to put work into it. So I'll give you 3 gratitude practical exercises that you can implement today to help bringing yourself to living and this first key to greatness. First is the 100 gratitude practical exercise. So what this is, it takes 20 days. So what you do is you write 5 things that you're grateful for today down on a piece of paper, or you type it in a Word document or something. And then you do the same thing tomorrow, but you can't repeat. And you do it again and again and again. So then you do that for 20 days. Right? So for 20 days, you're going to put 5 things new. Now, when you finish this 20 days from now, and as you write things and think about things, it brings them more to your top of mind, right? Now you have a list of 100 things that you are grateful for. And I want you to write it down or print it out big and put it wherever you spend the most time. Put it up in your office, put it up in your bedroom, put it above your mirror, put it wherever. Make a little card and put it in your car if you need to. And then anytime you start feeling yourself not living with gratitude, just glance up. Here's 100 things that I didn't say, you said you're grateful for. 100 reasons to work harder. 100 reasons to be your best self are on that piece of paper. And as you start to do that and you start to internalize it, it'll bring all that stuff to top of mind. The other thing is to put in your calendar scheduled time for spiritual inner reflection, whether that's meditation for you, whether it's just journaling, whether that's praying, whatever that means to you. Scientifically, something happens in our brain, and connections are made and we get actually releases endorphins and oxytocin and these feel good chemicals in our brain when we think internally, when we block out the noise and we just think just about us. There's a calmness to it. And they'll do that if someone meditates or they pray, it puts them in the same mental state. But really it's about this inner reflection and about this sense of gratitude. And whether that sense of gratitude is to Mother Earth or to others or to the God that you choose or to whatever that is, the biochemical feedback in your brain's the same. So spend time on that to reflect on yourself and add gratitude to whatever practice that is. So even if your practice is just to be still and sit for meditation, spend some time, spend a couple minutes afterward, inner reflecting what means the most to you. Thank you. Yeah, he says fade the noise for introspection, right? I have a closet in the guest bedroom with a little thing I sit on and it's just pitch black in there and I just go in there and different times. And I do a type of meditation, I'm not saying everyone has to, where you breathe, you practice breathing for a steady state and all you do is think about breathing. It's super hard to not think about other things, but it's great for you. So that's journaling or praying. But here's the thing. It can't just be a thing. Oh yeah, I think I'll try that. That's never going to happen. It has to go on your calendar right now. Make it reoccurring on your calendar, right? And maybe it's at once a week. Maybe it's every day. Maybe it's 3 times a day, whatever you need. But I'll tell you what, it'll help tremendously with your mental state if you spend some dedicated time to not be reacting to the world around you, but just with yourself and your own thoughts of gratitude. The third and final one, we're all interconnected, right? So make a challenge to yourself for the next week to tell one person a day how much they mean to you and that you're thankful for them. Just one person a day. Spend some time, think about it, write it out, and let them know how much you appreciate and are thankful for them. 1, you're going to change their day. 2, when we do nice things for other people, we get rewarded chemically as well. And it helps start shifting your brain to this now when you start doing that, because then you're going to think, you're going to look at your spouse, you're going to look at your brother or sister, you're going to look at your friend, you're going to look at your mentor, and you're thinking, oh, okay, what would I write about? I'm going to write something for them. And then as you make that a practice, then what you'll do is every time you start seeing someone that means something to you, your brain instantly goes to thankfulness and appreciation. And it will make your relationships deeper. Get out of, I hate small talk. There's enough small talk and BS and trash reality TV to distract ourselves. Let's get real and talk about humanity because life is too short to waste it on bullshit. So love 100%, show gratitude 100%, work 100%, push your body 100%, rest 100%. This mediocrity crap in the middle is for the birds. And it's for people that are living in fear of failure or fear of being hurt or fear of success. But it definitely doesn't come from a mindset of proper perspective and gratitude. So before I open up the Q&A, thank you guys for being here. If, hopefully you've got the book. If not, keep doing it. Send me any questions you have on that. I also have a small group I just started for entrepreneurs, leaders of all organizations and business owners. So if you're the type of person, or if you know someone who wants to be a part of a group, we do twice a week training, private training with me. I bring in small subject matter experts as well. I also we have an accountability thing. We drive goals forward. I have a whole private area for resources and templates and toolkits. And if anyone you know is interested in that, or you're interested, please message me and let me know. It's called Stronger Leaders Society. You can just shoot me a message or an email about that, or shoot here on Facebook. And let's see what else I got. I think that I'll leave you with this before you can. The key phrase here is, with the potential for greatness, which all of us have the potential for greatness, to achieve true transcendence, to end chronic human discontentment and to change the world around us and to live in a state of fulfillment constantly. With that comes an inherent moral obligation to strive every day to achieve it for all the reasons we just talked about. So thank you. Any comments? I'll stand for a couple minutes. Put it in the comment section. Thank you guys so much. What you got? Let's stump me. Anything? I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email down in the comments in case you want to reach out. You can do that. Boom. And then also I'll put a link here while we're waiting for questions on Stronger Leader Society. If you want to check that out on my website, I'll put that on there too. And it may not be for you. You know, maybe it's for someone that you know that wants to start their own company or is a corporate leader, right? We can't all be out here on our own. It takes a tribe. Okay, David, how much of motivation is predicated on inspiration? I think all of it. Right? Like, and what I'm talking about, I think that this motivation is a byproduct of your mindset. And if you are reactionary, and we're going to talk about more about the chemicals the dose chemicals that impact your decision making later. But if you wake up and you don't drive that with mindset, you sit and wait to be like, how do I feel today? Then you're letting the environment dictate to you your motivation for the day, right? Like business is doing great, relationship's great. Guess I'm going to go work hard today. Business isn't doing good. Something bad happened and I'm mad at my spouse or whatever, or got in a car wreck. I'm feeling down today. I'm going to take a break, right? So, but if you, but when you move away from waiting for external sources to dictate your motivation and you live with these gratitude. So as soon as you start thinking those thoughts, you go to your gratitude exercises and you start thinking about the people that you care about that were lost too early, about your friends that you lost too early, about all the people who don't have the amazing opportunities that day to be great and that you can impact them. I think anyone with a even base level of humanity and intelligence you can't deny that. And that should motivate you every day, or that you should drive your own motivation, but it should be, if it comes from the fuel source of gratitude, then it's eternal. So I guess that's my question or my answer. What do you say to people who struggle with chronic mental illness? I'd say go get help. In the book, I even talk about that, right? Like a warrior's mindset doesn't mean you're perfect. And especially if you dealt with trauma, especially at a young age in childhood or other times, or some people have a chemical imbalance, right? For most, we're way overprescribed, right? Let's be honest there. But everyone looks for a pill instead of, again, treating the symptoms instead of dealing with it. So what a warrior does is a warrior asks for help. And if you're dealing with chronic mental illness, then I'm not saying you have to wake up happy and chipper every day, but what you have to do is do something about it. Maybe that's professional help. Maybe you do need chronic medication, or for most people, they need medication for a short period of time, met with some sort of therapy to reconnect and get things right and move on. So that's a great question about people with chronic mental illness. And what I'm saying is that what a warrior does, they're not perfect, but a warrior keeps fighting to solve it. And they have the courage to ask for help and to go take action to continue to better themselves. So this is about improvement and achieving your potential for greatness and how you define it. So it's a very individualized thing. And for some people, maybe that's, if you came from nothing, maybe an abusive household, and you came from nothing and you lived on the street, man, if you get to your point where you have a happy relationship and a healthy family and a roof over their head and a couple cars, and you get to go on vacation every once in a while, and are active in your community, that's greatness. My God. But that's their greatness because of what they overcame and how they achieved, right? And that, to me, that's the American dream, is that each generation makes it better for the next one. So their children don't the worst thing you can do is, if you're in that bad situation, is perpetuate the cycle. So everyone's definition of greatness is going to be different for them. And if you struggle with chronic mental illness, then fight like a warrior to overcome that. And that means asking for help. Then go ask for help and go get it. And fight like hell, right? Just like someone who's dealing with a chronic illness, to overcome that. And then in the moment, be your best self. So great questions. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate everyone's time. We're going to do this again next week. Spread the word. If you like this, make sure you follow me on social media, and let's keep, what I would love to see talk about constant progress is that every time we do this, the audience gets bigger and bigger. So thank you guys so much. Again, I'm Sean Patton. Check me out at strongerleaders, strongerprofits.com. See ya.